Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the State Water Board's Water Rights Fee Stakeholder Meeting. We'll go ahead and get started in about 1 or 2 minutes here, just to give the opportunity for others to join. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for the State Water Resources Control Board's Water Rights Fee Stakeholder Meeting. This meeting is being held virtually through the Zoom and webcast platforms and is also being recorded. My name is David Ceccarelli, and I am the Fee and Revenue Branch Manager within the Division of Administrative Services. Today, we have many of our Fee and Revenue Branch staff working behind the scenes to ensure that this meeting runs as smoothly as possible. If any time throughout the meeting you find that you're having any difficulties, technical difficulties, please email waterrightsfees@waterboards.ca.gov. The link is currently on the screen, so go ahead and please click on that link if you're having any difficulties, technical difficulties. Also joining us today is John Russell, the Deputy Director of the Division of Administrative Services. I would also like to welcome and introduce Cassandra White, who has recently been hired as the Fee and Revenue Branch and is the section manager overseeing water quality, water rights, drinking water, and the ELAP fees. Cassandra will be assisting me today in today's presentation. Welcome, Cassandra. Individuals attending via Zoom, please use the raise the hand function if you'd like to ask a question or provide a comment. If you're joining us through the webcast, you can also submit a comment or ask a question by emailing the email on the screen. In the past, there has been a slight delay in the broadcast through the webcast. Therefore, through the meeting, staff may take a moment and pause so the broadcast can catch up to the listeners. Again, we thank you for joining us as we've moved virtually today. We thank you for your patience as, again, we've moved 100% virtually to this meeting place. We're doing our best to ensure everyone can participate in an effective manner. So just a few meeting guidelines. Remember to use the handouts that were sent to you via email. If you do not have the handouts, don't worry. We will be sharing the documents on the screen. You can request the documents after the meeting, or the handouts were also posted on our fee web page. Remember, any technical difficulties, please email us. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking. And remember, you can submit comments and questions throughout the event by sending them to the email that's on the screen. Again, that's waterrightsfees@waterboards.ca.gov. At this moment, let's just take a quick moment and review the agenda. So we can put the agenda up, please. Thank you. So on today's agenda, we'll go over the Water Rights Fund budget cost drivers, which is attachment 1. And then we'll open it up to an open discussion. We do have one item under the open discussion regarding certain types of temporary urgency change petitions. And I believe it's Phil Dudden will come in and as part of the Division of Water Rights and have introduced and have a slight discussion about that. And then at this point, let me turn it over to John Russell, the Deputy Director of Division of Administrative Services, for some opening comments.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you who took a little bit of time out of your day to come and join us today on this. Your feedback is important to us, and we do take it into consideration while we're setting our fees and before we go to the board. And the other thing I just wanted to say is that if you have any questions or issues or you want to talk to anybody, don't hesitate to contact either myself or David or Cassandra by email or phone, and we'll be happy to get back to you with whatever information we can. Thanks, David.
Thank you. So let's go to the next screen, please. So we have one slide here with two tables. And I, just kind of right off the bat, what I want to mention is that these numbers have not changed from the from the January proposed budget. So our meeting back in March, we reviewed the numbers and these numbers have not changed. So what you're looking at here in the first table is the Water Rights Fund budget allocation. And so our fee setting budget in 21-22, so in September of September of 2021, we took a fee structure to the board with budget allocation of $31.6 million or $31.7 million. And in the May revise, the budget allocation for the Water Rights Fund is $34 million. So basically a net difference of about $2.3 million or a net change of 7.2%. And so what's driving this? Well, I'm gonna pass it on to Cassandra, and then I'll let Cassandra go over the budget cost drivers that are in the May revise, and then we'll have some further discussion. Cassandra, I'll toss it to you right now.
Thank you, David. So as he said, the cost drivers making up the net difference in table 1. We'll start with the state operations, which this little over 2.65 million includes 2.5 million as part of the drought package, which was introduced last year as data modernization. Again, this was introduced last year, but it had not yet impacted the fund. The funding is $5 million total, and it's split 50-50 between general fund and the water rights fund. And as I mentioned in the water quality side of things this morning, section 4.05, expenditure reduction impacted all funds, and specifically for water rights, there was a savings of $315,000 for just about a 1% savings. And lastly, we see that pro rata is a slight increase at just about 0.2%. It's gone up a little bit. And all of this kind of circles back to the data presented in table 1 with the increased amount of, a little over $2 million and the percent change difference of about 7.2%. And that's all on that. Are there any questions on the cost drivers? If not, I will hand it back to David.
Thank you, Cassandra. So again, the adjustment that covered the budgetary expenditures is about 7.2%. Nothing has changed, of course, from the January proposed budget. Mainly, of course, what's driving this cost is the water rights data modernization. It was introduced into the budget last year. There was a $30 million upfront allocation from the general fund to kind of come into contract and get started into the program. And then an ongoing $5 million, as Cassandra said, which is supporting staff. I believe it's 12 positions, 6 positions for Water Rights Fund and 6 positions for General Fund, which is about $2.5 million. So that's mainly, again, what's driving the cost in the Water Rights Fund. So are there any questions again at this point?
Hey, David, can you hear me?
Yes. Is this Danny?
Yeah, it's Danny. Hey,
Okay.
so just to be clear, it was $5 million in the budget last year, 2.5 went out last year, and another 2.5 this year. correct?
So my understanding was that it was the 5 million for the staffing came into this fiscal year. So excuse me, for 22-23. But in the last year's budget allocation, that there was $30 million that was general fund for the upfront cost in the contract. That 5 million wasn't in last year.
Okay, and I apologize. Budget drives me crazy. Trying to chase all the little peas underneath the shells, but so I'm confused between the 5 million and the 2.5 million drought package, and I should have that straight in my head, but I don't.
So hopefully I can explain this. So and I know Eric Eckall had kind of also explained it last time. So if Eric or program staff want to jump in also, they can. So as part of the drought package, there was 30 million that was for contracts, so not personal services, but then ongoing for staffing starting in fiscal year 22-23, there would be $5 million allocated for staff. Now of that, it was split 2.5 million for water rights fund and $2.5 million for general fund. And that's how it was broken out.
Okay, all right. I think I understand that. So the 2.65 that's rounding up the 2.5.
Well, not really. So so what's included in the 2.6 is the $2.5 million in the data modernization. The other 165,000 is basically the total water rate state operation increases.
Okay.
So when the budget office, and finance, they work together and look at all the costs, it came out to about $165,000.
Okay. Clear as mud.
Right. Hey, if you have any other questions,
No,
after this, just let me know.
No, I know you've always been good at responding. So thank you.
Keith, I think you have your hand up next.
Can you hear me, David?
Yes.
Okay, my question is just out of ignorance. Forgive me for being so stupid, but is the fee are the fees you charge for water rights, are they based on an annual water rights distribution, or are they based on usage, and how are they determined?
So we have different, there's permits, there's applications, there's a licensing, and then we have the FERC program. And so kind of based on the right of the use of the water, basically, and kind of what's written into what fee structure you fall with under, is how you're charged. Again, there's different petitions and so forth that are assessed fees. So there's different metrics that go within, depending on what type of regulatory measure or permit that you're actually covered under. And I know there's a lot of, on our fee web, on the water rights webpage, there's some really good information about the water rights program and all the details in the water rights program.
How has Sigma changed the water rights fees and affected the fees in the state? Like, for example, i.e. Kings River water coming out of Pine Flat.
So I don't have the specific, I could pass this on to whether David Rose or Aaron. I know you guys are on. If you guys want to talk a little more about this on the technical side.
Yeah, I think, can you hear me, David?
Yes.
I think the simple answer is that Sigma hasn't changed the fees on the water rights side pretty much at all. Sigma will have its own fee structure. There are relatively new fees for surface water permits for the diversion of water to underground storage under certain contexts, but generally Sigma fees are completely distinct from surface water fees that may or may not involve diversion to underground storage later. Hopefully that answers the question.
Is the diversion, oh, I got two Davids here. Is the diversion water to groundwater recharge, is that going to be a separate fee? And is it going to come, will it also charge fees against federal water versus state water?
So there's no separate fee for federal water versus state water. There's just water. If you need a permit for a surface water diversion, then it really depends on what type of permit that is. There are newer permits that the board has created a process and fee for, like a temporary 5-year permit for diversion of water to underground storage. But there's really no, like, for example, if somebody already has a permit for diversion of water to storage and they want to change some of that storage to underground storage instead of above ground storage, there may be a petition for change fee. But if they already have that right, then they're already paying for that under their existing annual fees for their permit or license. So, I mean, if it's a right that somebody already has and they just want to start putting the water into underground storage, that generally wouldn't involve anything other than possibly a change petition fee. If it's a new right for new surface water diversion to storage, then that would have a fee commensurate with whichever type of right it is. If it's a regular temporary permit, or if it's one of these 5-year temporary permits, or if it's a regular permit, not a temporary permit, then generally those would have separate fee amounts, but it's still going to use generally the same structure of most of the water rights fees, which is face value of the amount applied for to be diverted and put into storage. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Is that corrugated to a title? Does that have anything to do with title, the different titles? Different allocation or licenses or titles or?
No, I mean,
No.
there's
Water's water, right?
water's water. If you need as permission from the state to divert that water, I guess it depends on the circumstances, because many folks already have the right to divert water. They have a permit or license from the board, and so they may just need a change petition to authorize a new place of storage, something like that. But if there's a new right being applied for, then that would be under the new, like, the application fee. But it really doesn't make a difference other than the type of right from the state you're applying for, temporary permit or permanent, that type of thing.
Could you just tell me, David, the difference between what's that? What do you mean by if you need permission from the state? Are there waters? Are you saying there's waters in the state that has that water that the state has no jurisdiction over and no right to charge fees for?
There's groundwater that's already, we're talking about surface water diversions for
Right.
recharge, correct?
Right.
Not groundwater. Generally, the board doesn't charge any fees for pre-1914 appropriative rights. And so if somebody already has one of those rights, they could make a change to that right potentially without needing permission from the board or without needing a change petition and to pay fees for that. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, sir. And riparian rights, they're they're considered riparian? Is there a fee for that, riparian?
Riparian also generally is not subject to the board's fees, but riparian rights generally don't authorize the storage of water. So that's why I only mentioned pre-1914 appropriative rights, because you can't store water under a riparian right, and underground storage is storage.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. David's.
Thank you, Keith.
Thanks for the question.
Bob, I think you were next.
Thank you. A couple of things. One is to support Danny. On the data modernization project, I had a conversation with Eric, and I want to concede that he's convinced me that our share of the data modernization is money well spent. So I wish he was listening. On the 30 million, that went to the RFP, just so everybody understands. And there's a vendor selection that's about ready to be. Well, I think any day now they should pick a vendor. Supposedly, and we'll be watching this, that the project is actually going to make filing our data more convenient and less costly. So I'm just hoping that's true. I will add, while I've got the mic, that for the next meeting in August, well in advance, as with water quality, we would like to see a full set of data like we've had in the past, and that is for fiscal year 10-11, current year, and budget year, the number of positions, the classifications, and which programs they're assigned to, so we can figure out where our money's going and how it's being invested. We'd like to have a full discussion. And to conclude, I think my remarks in the interests of economy, I'd like the water rights staff to follow the example of water quality this morning and agree to help work with the stakeholders in having a cost of compliance forum to separate it from fees so we can have an ongoing discussion on efficiency and effectiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. So I'm not seeing any other questions on the Zoom. Are there any email questions?
One email question from Steve Hagan asking, are there any anticipated drought actions that will show up in next year's fees?
So I'll let John also chime in also. Right now, though, I think all the drought work at the water board is being supported by general fund. I can't say right now anticipate any of like that drought work being, shifted over to fees. But do you have a take on that, John?
No, that's correct. Right now, almost all the drought, well, I should say all the drought work that we know of is general fund supported.
Okay, so as I've said before, if you're looking at these charts and you have any additional questions, please go ahead and reach out to me. Looks like Keith has his hand up again. So Keith, you have another question?
David, I can wait till the general discussion period. Are we going to have a general discussion on also?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll hold it. I'll hold
Okay.
that.
So go, if we can have the agenda back up here. So we'll move into the open discussion. And before we open it up, I do have program staff, Phil Dutton from the Division of Water Rights wants to talk about a potential change in one of the temporary urgency change petitions. So Phil, are you on?
Yeah, hi David. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's see, a little bit of background about what I'm here today for. As you may or may not be aware, at the board meeting this week, the State Water Board approved a voluntary water sharing agreement for the Upper Russian River watershed. And in support of this locally developed drought effort and others across the state, division staff expect to propose a general petition fee coming through this fee cycle. That's going to be a fee that's applicable to change petitions facilitating these voluntary agreements and sharing agreements, voluntary agreements, both in the Russian as well as other watersheds across the state. The specifics I think we're still working on, so I don't have a lot of information to share on that yet. But I think by the time the next meeting rolls around on the topic, we'll have a bit more information we can share with you all. But I wanted to take a quick moment, introduce myself, and note that this is something we're working on, and we'll have further information in the coming weeks.
Good.
Thank you, Phil. Anyone have any questions regarding that? Okay. Again, thank you, Phil. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll stick around if there's questions.
Okay. And so at this point, just kind of open discussion. So Keith, I think you wanted to bring something up. So I'm not hearing anything. Sounds like he's on mute. So Keith, if you're trying to speak, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that, David. So for Phil, is there on the Russian River deal, is there any volumetric portions of it that can you discuss about the volume?
I believe our expectation at this stage, and like I say, it's not fully fleshed out yet, is that for implementation, the change that we're running into will probably go to a flat programmatic, similar to maybe a water quality general order fee. So it'll allow for sort of an enrollment into these various programs. And there'll be a fee for the program and submitting that petition to establish the program. But there won't be a per right or per volume fee necessarily.
Are those fees all counted for? Are they all for the allocation for 2020, or is it 2022 or 2023? Either David or Phil. Are you talking about?
I'll let maybe David answer more fully.
I didn't know when a water year, when your water year runs on that fee charge. I don't know, when does that?
Yeah, and I mean
cycle.
Right, and it depends on when it's assessed within the fiscal year. So it gets accounted for in that fiscal year. So if it's for 22-23 and that revenue comes in, it's going to be accounted for that fiscal year.
Yeah, I would say just process-wise, it will come in and be received similar to any other TUCP filing fee.
Is the fee, Philip? Are the fees charged at point source? Are they charged physically for the water that moves after read or measured, or are the fees charged based on the on a application in paper?
So what we're considering is it'll be a filing fee for the petition that would be the mechanism approving the program for the year.
And is that the same across the board for all the waterways or most of the storage facilities in the state?
I maybe would defer to David for a more universal answer, but for petitions, I would say that is the case.
I've been told that Kings River behind Pine Flat is a different monster when it comes to the state charging fees. Or does it charge the same? Is Pine Flat, Friant, and Shasta, all those fees the same?
I'm going to defer to David or others on the call for that. That's a bit beyond the my day-to-day zone.
Is that your paycheck level? Pay grade?
So, so Phil, maybe I'll jump in and David Rose can augment or tack on to the
Please.
extent that it makes sense to do so. Fees differ based upon, as David was describing earlier, David Rose, not David Ceccarelli, was describing earlier, based upon what you're applying for and the size of the right. So every water right is not charged the same fee. It's charged a fee based upon, in some cases, the amount of water that is being, that is associated with that specific water right. And it's not necessarily how much water is used, but the amount of water that is allocated to that right. So every water right is not the same, and every water right is not charged the same fee because it is based upon the size of the right and the type of the right or action that you're requesting the board take relative to that water right.
So Aaron, what kind of system do you use for checks and balances that would ensure that an application for an order to remove water out of the system or divert water out of the system is actually physically matches that diversion request on paper? What system do you have in place to confirm that? Do you have a confirmation, or is it just like, we trust you, you're honest?
I'm not sure I'm fully tracking your question.
Okay.
Do you have an enforcement section within the Division of Water Rights that goes out and investigates complaints that are filed relative to, actions that people are saying they don't think are legal? And the board on its own can go out and the staff can do inspections as well.
Wow, you jumped right straight to illegal from legal to illegal. That was quick. I wasn't really trying to insinuate that. I was just really basically trying to get down to the fundamental math and the particular nuts and bolts on how you actually measure the water. Like, for example,
There are reporting and requirements in place for water users of a certain size, and that needs to be done annually. All water rights are required to report annually on their water use, and larger rights are required to actually measure and report on their water use.
So is there a system for enforcement that if somebody does put an application in, but extrapolates more water, or does it in a fashion that makes it seem as if they're taking the water and not taking the water, or makes it seem like they are taking water or they're not taking water, but they are? Is there anything like that that protects, the system itself, that checks and balances the system? I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but can somebody cheat the system?
What does this have to do with water rights fees?
Yeah, I'm not tracking your question, and
Who asked that just now? What does this have to do with water rights fees? Who asked that question? Who asked that?
Bob Gore.
Bob Gore?
Yeah,
Bob, what's your authority?
that's just a question.
What's your authority? Are you with DWR or are you with the state?
No, I'm just a civilian like you.
So then why would you ask that question, Bob?
Because this workshop is dedicated to fees, and it seems to have devolved into Water Rights 101.
It seems like that you just don't have the patience, Bob, for somebody who's new at this and is asking a very streamlined question about how the state itself protects its ability to charge fees. All I'm asking for is if they can explain to me how the mechanics work. If you have a problem with that, Bob, I think you should take that up with the state.
I think we want everyone to be respectful of everybody else in this meeting. So I think.
Okay, so
Bob,
I don't appreciate
so-
what Bob just said about me asking my question.
Okay, I understand that, but we want to make sure that we're respecting everybody's views and time here today. Keith, If you have,
I'm asking you a nuts and bolts question about the mechanics of
I'm
how
not
you
tracking.
would collect the data to charge the fees. That's all. Why is that so hard to answer, Aaron?
So how we charge fees is based upon those people that have water rights. So that's the nuts and bolts. People apply for water rights. We issue water rights. We charge those people that have water rights fees associated with their water rights.
Yeah, but how do
Yeah,
you monitor that? I mean, how do you confirm that that's actually the water they used or didn't use?
Sorry, Keith, this is David Rose, State Water Board. Maybe I can help simplify this a little bit. Is the fees for most categories of fees are charged based on the face value of the application or the right that's applied for, meaning the maximum amount of water that the right would allow to be diverted. So it is largely untethered from the actual amount of water that's used in any given year under the right. And so in terms of quality assurance and quality control, what Aaron was talking about enforcement is that if somebody's using more water than they are authorized to use under their right, then that could be an enforcement matter. But generally from a fee standpoint, those numbers, they don't really change year to year because it is literally on paper that it is what the applicant has applied for. Does that
Okay,
help?
David. Yes, that helps a lot, David. I really appreciate that. That was exactly to point. That was exactly to my point. So what you're saying is basically is that if I put in an application on paper and I'm willing to pay the fee, that's the water I'm using, whether I get it or not.
It's the maximum amount that you can use under that permit or license. Yes. If it's available, of course.
Yeah, I understand that. That was my basic question. I apologize for people who misinterpret or misunderstand the question. I think it's beyond water rights 101. But
happy that we can.
Well, David, listen. If this water,
yeah.
if this water under SGMA belongs to the state, and the state's property belongs to the people of the state, then wouldn't you think that it would be okay for me to ask a question as an individual of the state of how my state agencies are collecting these fees? And you think that's a fair question?
Any of the questions about our fees are something that we're going to try to answer for you.
Thank you.
SGMA is a little bit different just because that's the groundwater fees, but there is an overlap in that. So what we're talking about right now generally is the surface water fees, which the Water Board has a more direct regulatory role over.
Okay.
And the surface water fees, those come into play when you're talking about diversion from a river or stream to recharge a groundwater basin, for example, or just for direct diversion or use from the surface stream. The SGMA is for the water that's already in the ground, and the board has a slightly different role under the SGMA context. So we have a different fee structure, generally not even in place for those diversions. But when it comes to the operation of putting water from surface to subsurface, those aren't the SGMA fees, but those are just really under the regular surface water rights and surface water fees that we're talking about here. So it may be a little bit unwieldy for the nuances of it, but it's it's really kind of the board's jurisdiction is what triggers the fees. So SGMA versus the surface water.
That's what I was getting at, David, the jurisdiction. So it's a jurisdictional issue. I've had somebody tell me with the water district that the Kings River water is not under the state's jurisdiction. The water behind Pine Flat Dam is not under state jurisdiction. So that's why I was trying to ask the question and get to the point. Is it or is it not under state jurisdiction, the water behind Pine Flat?
Got it. I'm not 100% sure about how that water is colored. Pine Flat, I'm not an expert on Pine Flat, but generally a permit or license from the state is required for all surface water diversions that aren't riparian. And of course, like I said, riparian rights don't authorize storage. So we're talking about Pine Flat Dam. If that water was entirely diverted pursuant to pre-1914 appropriative water rights, then generally the board wouldn't have jurisdiction. And also, what jurisdiction means really is permitting authority. And if we don't have permitting authority, then we're not providing that same degree of oversight, and therefore we're not charging fees for it because we're not doing that oversight. So that's why most of the surface water right fees are related to permits and licenses. I couldn't tell you whether all the water behind Pine Flat is stored pursuant to pre-1914 appropriative rights or not. Sometimes dams were constructed before 1914, but then enlarged after 1914. So a permit would be required from the State Water Board, and that would be subject to the regular permitting structure for application and then annual fees after the right's been perfected.
So David, does the fee get charged if you combine and blend all the different titled water, the colored water in for example, we're talking about Pine Flat. So if I have riparian rights, if I have pre-1914, if I have adjudicated rights, do all those get bundled and charged under the same fee structure?
Fee structure, yes, because that includes all the different types that the water board charges fees for. It wouldn't be riparian because, like I said, there wouldn't be the storage of that. But in the simplest scenario where there was a dam constructed before 1914 and then enlarged after it, then the water board would only be charging fees on the right to divert and store water behind that dam that were initiated after 1914, and would not be charging for really anything to do with the water rights that existed prior to 1914. So we're not asking about how they're blending that in the water that's stored in there, but the amount that can be stored under the permit or license, that's what the fees are charged on, that right. So it's really right by right, not location by location per se.
And also in that discussion, riparian water rights are not stored, right? Riparian water rights are allowed if there's flows, surface flows, and there's other laws that pertain to riparian, but riparian water rights are not stored rights, right? So the water so the water coming out behind a dam really isn't riparian water. The riparian water is what's in the river.
There's, of course, nuances about what water would have passed naturally without the dam being there and what the riparian right holders are entitled to, but you're generally correct. If it's a release of stored water, then we're not charging fees for the rediversion of that stored water, and yeah, that's generally correct.
I thank you, David. I'm sorry, David. David Cassell, yeah, I'm sorry. Ceccarelli. I apologize for taking him off track if I did. I just needed to have a firm understanding of how that fee structure was used and charged. Thank you, David. That was very good, David Rose. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Does anyone else have any discussion, anything they want to bring up in an open discussion portion now?
Everybody left the room.
So again, highlight this again, kind of as John mentioned earlier, during this process, if anyone has any questions or concerns, or as they look at the tables, they want to ask any additional questions, please reach out to me or Cassandra. And if it's, again, more of a water rights kind of program related question, we can get you in connection with the proper staff. John Russell, you have any closing comments?
No, other than thanks again for everybody for attending today.
So I want to thank everyone. So next steps, we have the August 4th stakeholder meeting. And by then, of course, we'll have the hopefully we'll have the governor's signed budget in place, so we'll be able to look at that. I think that's going to happen this week. And then I know there's a few action items. I know Bob has asked for a few things, so we'll work through those and kind of behind the scenes, kind of maybe be in contact with Bob if there's some clarification. But I think we understand what Bob wants.
Sure, I'll send a note.
And thank you, Bob. And then we're driving to our board meeting, which is September 20th. Of course, there'll be a public comment period before that. To give an opportunity to comment on staff's recommendations and proposals. So with that said, I thank everyone, and we'll be talking soon. Everyone have a good weekend. Thank you.